Watch this.
There's a lot going on at the Canyon County Fairgrounds. We've got an update on the renovation of the rodeo arena and how a new hotel will impact people who really like dirt lot parking. The Gem State has already put its own restrictions on Medicaid, and now Congress is considering considerable changes to the health insurance program. One Idahoan is making the case those cuts will hurt Idaho kids the most. Other federal cuts could be slicing closer to how we study climate change. A Boise State scientist, who just won a presidential award for her work, by the way, gives her theory on the impact of research funding. Well, after celebrating 100 years of the Caldwell Night Rodeo last August, managers decided it was time to wrangle up some changes and some upgrades on the rodeo grounds. The project is going to allow them to keep up with the growth both in Canyon County and the interest in the rodeo. As Aspen Shumpert found out, it's also going to add a few more seats to that rodeo grounds, right?
Yep, that's right. $7.5 million of renovations are coming over the course of several years, and it's happening in phases. Back in November, we showed you the decades-old announcer booth that came down when they broke ground on the project. Today, we got to see the progress of the new one that is up to replace it. The new announcer booth is about 3 times the size of the old one. It will soon be getting a big screen and speakers added onto it when it's finished. It will also have premium suites and concession stands for those who are enjoying the rodeo from up there.
You know, it looks big now. Wait till we get a height on it. It's gonna be massive, and it's gonna be beautiful. And it depicts exactly what we want to happen in the future for the Caldwell Night Rodeo.
The announcer booth, which is phase 1 of the project, will be finished before the rodeo this summer. In the next few years, the rodeo will also add 20 skyboxes around the arena and updates to the Coors Corner. Those will be possible with help from D&B Supply and J.R. Simplot, who recently made donations to the campaign. The rodeo have called their contributions significant, but neither businesses would disclose those exact amounts. The entire project, all 3 phases, is expected to finish for the 2028 rodeo, which includes space for 500 more spectators. And there's another project moving forward in the area near the Caldwell Event Center. A hotel is being built on the dirt lot right across from the fairgrounds. The lot has historically been used for event parking, so residents got worried when they heard those spaces would go away. The city found space it owns around the event center where they will add hundreds of parking spaces to it.
We just wanted to make sure that we can help accommodate the need that's out here today.
The dirt lot in Caldwell, across from the Canyon County Fairgrounds, has historically served as a place to park during events like the county fair and the Caldwell Night Rodeo.
If you were to chalk this lot as it is today, you have roughly 295 stalls.
When residents heard that parking would be replaced once a new hotel was built, they weren't thrilled.
Whether it is a big event or it's a small event, this is the only parking lot that makes sense for people to actually park in.
With the hotel project now approved, the city has created alternative parking plans.
The hotel, actually in discussing this with Mayor Wagner, we were looking for a compromise, finding a way after numerous discussions with the community, with again our stakeholders, finding a way to accommodate all of the needs in the area.
The hotel was originally slated to use the entire lot, but has agreed to leave part of the dirt, enough for 72 spaces, for event parking.
Basically, 3/4 of an acre will remain in the city's possession for parking long term.
The city is also creating hundreds of new spaces in neighboring lots, adding 682 stalls in the field across from the existing Canyon County Fair building and another 82 stalls on Gaviola Field.
And we want to be sure to be able to support what's happening on the front lines. And it's important for us to continue to have this area be the amenity that's been to the city for many, many years.
Now, these improvements that are coming for parking will be done in time for the rodeo and the fair this year. The city says they're looking at Wolf Field as well to see if they can add any more parking spaces there. They say if they can, that might add a few other hundred at Wolf Field in the future.
Okay, I know we were talking about this, but this claim of squatters' rights on this dirt lot has just been amazing to me through this whole process. But they are kind of accommodating them.
They are.
And giving them some spaces just around the corner?
Yeah, around the corner, down the block.
Okay.
I know proximity, that dirt lot is right in front.
Yeah.
So it's hard to let it go. But the city did look at some other options and are adding hundreds of spots in the area.
All right, change is coming. All right, thank you very much, Aspen. Well, it is budget setting season in Congress, and Medicaid funding isn't just a priority for Idaho legislators. This past session, they put restrictions on who is eligible for Medicaid expansion in Idaho, something sponsors of the bill said would save the state millions of dollars. Governor Little signed that into law, by the way. Now Congress is positioned to make billions or even trillions of dollars in cuts. Much like they did in our state house, Idaho stakeholders made their case today on Capitol Hill about the impact major Medicaid cuts will have on the gem state. Joe Paris listened in to find out why there's such a push to cut Medicaid spending now.
Yeah, it's something that kind of goes in with the policies and the conservative overarching, I guess, ideas in Congress. The idea that cutting Medicaid would save the United States a lot of money and would be more efficient in terms of spending and outcomes if it was a smaller program. That's the conservative approach to this. This is also part of the metagame of just cutting spending across government. Social Security and Medicare are sort of off limits, so Medicaid is the big target. If Republicans are successful, critics like the Idaho Asset Building Network and Idaho Supports Medicaid, they worry about the outcomes.
Medicaid expansion would likely end. The Idaho legislature is statutorily required to review the program and decide whether to terminate expansion if federal funding drops below that 90%. This would push approximately 88,000 Idahoans back into the health coverage gap without any affordable health insurance options.
So if Medicaid expansion does end and people do end up in the gap, critics ask what safety net programs will be there to help them. Legislative action in recent years has changed what that looks like in a big way. And Hillary Hagan, who you just heard from, she's with Idaho Supports Medicaid. She explains what she sees happening.
The catastrophic healthcare fund, the state indigent county fund, those were programs that were available that are no longer available. So if we see cuts of this magnitude happen and Medicaid expansion goes away, Idahoans who are now finding themselves newly uninsured are not going to have any safety net program other than the emergency room.
The new Idaho law on Medicaid also says that the federal contribution for Medicaid goes down and lawmakers are not in session, the Department of Health and Welfare here in Idaho, they needs to take action, and that includes making reductions or elimination of what are called optional benefits. That's also a concern, Brian, for advocates of Medicaid. They understand that people want to save money, but not at the cost of human life, they say.
I understand this is a process that's going to take a little bit of time, though, this Medicaid consideration in Congress.
Yes, this won't happen overnight, and there are a lot of rules and administrative procedures to get through. However, Congress right now weighing if it could be billions or trillions in cuts. The House and Senate kind of working that deal over in D.C.
And stop me if I'm wrong, Idaho's changes to their our Medicaid expansion still has to be approved by a federal agency. Has that happened yet, or what do we know about that?
Correct. So those are the waivers that need to get signed off on, and as of today, that has not happened.
Okay.
You may remember back in 2019, during the previous Trump administration, Idaho had applied for some waivers. Those sat on a desk and were actually never addressed. So we expect these to be addressed in more, I guess, timely manner, but we will find out.
All right. Thank you very much, Joe. Well, law enforcement in Oregon have arrested a man they say is behind a recent fatal crash. Plus, don't have your star card? Well, the deadline is approaching for you and travelers and basically anyone waiting for their real ID. There could be a virtual option, though. Hunter Funk has details in today's 411.
A man is behind bars after a crash in Oregon killed a softball player and a coach. Oregon State Police say 32-year-old Jonathan Dowdy is being held at the Coos County Jail. OSP says he's charged with manslaughter, reckless endangering, and driving under the influence of intoxicants. Investigators say an SUV crossed the center line and hit a bus carrying 10 members of a college softball team. 19-year-old Kylie Jones, who is from Nampa, along with the head coach, Jamie Strins, both died in the crash. With the Star Card deadline only a few weeks away, the DMV is going to be busy, and they're asking people to use their online renewal service to help lighten the load at offices. Many DMV locations operate through appointments now, and people needing their real ID will have to visit in person to complete the process. Therefore, the DMV is asking anyone who can use the online tool for a driver's license renewal to do so in order to free up the space. The countdown is on. Tickets for the 2025 St. Jude Dream Home giveaway go on sale tomorrow at 5 a.m. Tickets are $100. The home, built by Berkeley Building Company, is located in the Oak Lawn community in Star. The house is 2,100 square feet with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. It's valued at $750,000. 31,777 tickets will be available, and they will go fast. So set an alarm to get your tickets early. If you buy a ticket tomorrow, you'll also be eligible to win some of the early bird prizes, including a brand new 2025 Ford pickup truck. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Hunter Funk.
We, the jury, duly impaneled and sworn in the above entitled action, upon our oaths, do find the defendant, Vallow Daybell, as to the crime of count 1, conspiracy to commit first-degree murder occurring on or about July 11, 2019, guilty. Signed, foreperson.
That was about 15 minutes ago, with that Arizona jury finding Vallow Daybell guilty in the death of her 4th husband, Charles Vallow. She's been on trial in Arizona for the murder of that man, Charles Vallow. Conspiracy to commit murder was the charge and what she's been found guilty of. As you heard the date as well, back in 2019, it was Lori's brother, Alex Cox, who shot and killed Charles, that'd be Lori's 4th husband. Vallow Daybell has already been convicted of murdering her 2 kids, Tylee Ryan and JJ, and is serving several life sentences in Idaho for those deaths. Well, through this trial, which lasted about a week and a half, Lori Vallow represented herself in Arizona. A couple of months ago, a couple of Boise State University science and engineering professors earned the highest award for their work in their respective fields. The PCASE Award, Presidential Early Career Awards for Scientists and Engineers. Doctors David Estrada and Ellen Enderlin were the first ever honorees from BSU. Dr. Enderlin has spent the last 6 years in the geoscience department. She's a professor, but she's also a scientist, which means she teaches, but she also does some research. These days, though, it's mostly about teaching students to be research scientists. Dr. Enderlin's PCASE was for her work with NASA, studying how glaciers melt, break off to become icebergs, and how those then melt into the ocean. Part of her research, which is still ongoing, is being funded by the U.S. National Science Foundation, a federal agency that is now getting the DOGE treatment. Last week, in an effort to cut costs, all new research grants were frozen. No pun intended. And any active research grant is being considered for termination right now for anything associated with diversity, equity, and inclusion. And according to Nature magazine, that could include up to 200 research grants. So this being Earth Day, we wanted to get an assessment of Dr. Enderlin's research and find out what she thinks about research funding now under the microscope.
All these little white things you see here, these are actually icebergs that have broken off from this
Dr.
glacier.
Ellen Enderlin has spent a lot of time looking at glaciers.
So you can see that snow-covered area is decreasing.
From a first-floor office in Boise State's Environmental Research Building.
I also use something called LIDAR, which is basically light coming from a satellite, and you can use that to measure elevations.
An associate professor in the geoscience department, Dr. Endelin calls herself a glaciologist, but her focus is mostly on melting icebergs.
No one had actually looked at them before.
Really?
Like, icebergs were pretty much not studied. I mean, some people tracked them, but we hadn't really thought about how they're distributing fresh water. If we pump a lot of ice out into the ocean, not only does it influence sea level rise, but it can also influence our climate because it can influence ocean circulation.
So they're kind of important.
Yeah, they're tremendously important. So again, not here locally. You'd be like, oh, why does this matter? Like, we're not going to be influenced by sea level rise. We live in Idaho.
But the weather.
But the weather is really important. So the ocean circulation is the thing that I really worry about, and because that controls our weather patterns. And so modern agriculture is built around fairly regular, stable weather patterns. But that's the sorts of things that we're worried about. And it's this sort of stuff that seems really far afield, seems really small. So you hear, oh, sea level is changing by millimeters per year. And people are like, why do I need to care about that? Like, it seems like it's such a small change that how could it possibly be important? And it's hard to convey that, and for you to process that as a human being and say, oh no, that's actually like really impactful.
So this research, this is all funded by grants that are both federal but also outside the feds. Okay. Grants have been a big part of the news lately.
Yep. Yeah, oh yeah.
Your life work is based on grants and funded by that. Are you worried about that? The way things are going right now?
Yeah, I mean, everyone is, because it is so critical to the science and engineering progress that we make in this country. I mean, we have been leaders in science and engineering. It's so incredibly important, and we use that money not only to make these like scientific advances, but then to teach other people, teach graduate students, undergraduates, how to also be scientists and engineers with those skills that they get only through hands-on research. We're not training them with those skills that then they can go out and make a difference.
The focus right now seems to be kind of these culture wars, like the DEI, that kind of stuff. I mean, some would consider climate change kind of in that it's controversial. Are you worried that these cuts could come to your neck of the woods?
Yeah, I mean, climate change is something that is sort of like under fire right now. I've always had a really hard time with this. It should not be a political thing. Like, it is happening. Climate change is definitely happening. I know we're producing greenhouse gases, so it really shouldn't be controversial. And I think a lot of people see that the climate is changing. I mean, people are losing their insurance because natural hazards are becoming more common as the climate is changing. So it's really hard to think about the fact that that is something that people want to defund, or we can't talk about. If we don't talk about it, it doesn't make it go away.
Dr. Endelin says there's this perception, there's a lot of fluff, a lot of extra in academic research, like they're just getting more money than they really need. She insists that's not the case. The National Science Foundation funds more than 1,900 organizations, more than 350,000 researchers, students, teachers, and entrepreneurs, and they have a budget of more than $9 billion. But 93% of that supports research and education. And it's not like they're just handing out cash. Research grant approval is a rigorous 4-step process with only a 20 to 30% success rate. Dr. Endelin believes we should be putting actually more money into research, especially when it comes to glaciers and climate change. Not just on how we adapt to it, but how we can minimize how we're contributing to that changing climate. Well, hey, it is Earth Day, as we mentioned already, and one nonprofit called Bugs is blooming in the heart of Boise. It's teaching kids and adults as well about the earth, not just today, but every day. The Boise Urban Garden School, Bugs, focuses on the fundamentals of gardening and nutrition through science and environmental-based lesson plans. Hunter Funk explains it started from, well, just two people who wanted to make a community basically a healthier place.
Yeah, simply put, right? A garden, pretty healthy.
Yeah.
Amy Hutchinson and Wendy Young are the two that wanted to help people grow their own food and to find a passion for it. The two are garden enthusiasts, and it sprouted into the nonprofit Bugs, and this year marks 21 years. And as the educational program coordinator, Polly Ritchie says, once kids learn about it, they're more likely to eat it.
I think it's important for everybody. Kids especially. Kids are sponges of information, and I think it's really important for them to get outside, be in the fresh air, get their hands a little bit dirty, and to be able to see where healthy, natural, whole food comes from and how it's grown.
Bugs started small in a church garden, and now they have a larger organic regenerative garden where they do farm-to-table culinary classes, and each year Bugs serves about 10,000 youth through their various education programs like their outdoor preschool, on-site field trips, and culinary and garden camps and classes. Okay, so if you don't have a green thumb like myself, coming up at 6, we joined a class field trip to show you what they're teaching the kids. So maybe we can learn a thing or two about the process of growing plants, Brian.
Okay, so I saw those starts that you had, those bins and trays of bins.
Yeah.
Or starts, excuse me. Are those something that like the rest of the community could get a part of, or is that just for the program?
I believe, it's adults and youth, so
Okay.
yeah,
So
everybody can be
those?
part of it.
All right.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Learn how to compost too. We were
Exactly.
talking about that the other day.
All right, yes, we were. We're looking forward to that at 6. Thanks, Hunter.
Yeah.
Well, today was a fairly nice day in the Treasure Valley. Saw some sunshine today. Probably felt a little bit warmer than it actually was because of that sunshine. Looking outside right now, it's 63 in Boise and Twin Falls. We had lots of cloud coverage over the Boise Mountains today, so this is that camera pointed directly at it. Doesn't look that dark and rest in the other parts of the Treasure Valley. Mountains right now, you can see that snow is almost gone, still in the 50s right now though. Looking at your evening in the Treasure Valley, should be a pretty good evening. Dip down into the 50s about 9 p.m. or so, but we'll have some daylight until 8:30, a little afterwards after the sun sets, and it'll be a pretty calm night. However, we will have some more clouds developing, but tomorrow should be a little bit warmer than today. We'll be warming up slowly. For the next couple days, we're looking at 67 in Mountain Home, Boise, and Nampa tomorrow, 69 in Ontario, so getting close to 70 in some spots of the Treasure Valley. Magic Valley looks to stick in the lower side of the 60s tomorrow, and then the mountains are going to be in the 50s. Winds will pick up a little bit tomorrow evening, looking at winds still staying under 20 miles per hour, so could become a little bit of a nuisance, but more so looking breezy rather than anything damaging. We do have some changes coming our way, so we'll be warming up for the next couple days into the 70s by Thursday and Friday. However, we do have instability building into our atmosphere come this weekend. There could be some showers that show up tomorrow in higher elevations, but Boise's not looking at showers possibly occurring until this weekend.
All right, so Brian in Boise has a way to lower the cost of Medicaid spending, or just basically health care in general. He says if you take away the health care benefits from people, it's okay. They can always file bankruptcy and then just force the government to pay for it anyway. Then you, I guess, get onto Medicaid one way or another. I'm glad we stopped funding the iceberg research. How stupid, says Joe Ford. Of course, icebergs are bad. They sank the Titanic. I know, tongue-in-cheek, I get that. But we actually talked about that. Freshwater icebergs actually change the currents of the ocean because, well, salt water is denser, so it sinks. That freshwater on top, things change, and that's what changes the weather, which again eventually makes its way to Idaho and changes all of that here as well, even though we're pretty far inland. Hey, Brian, if you wear a tie, we couldn't see that you have a missing button on your shirt. Nope, it's not missing, just unbuttoned. Had to put a mic on earlier, forgot. Thanks for the reminder, though. We'll see you tomorrow.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app everywhere you stream.